Hi everyone, and welcome to another Masters of Photography Freestream. Scarlet Page has photographed so many incredible rock stars and bands, including the Rolling Stones, David Bowie, Sir Paul McCartney, Stereophonics, Robbie Williams, The Verve, Noel and Liam Gallagher, and of course her father, the legendary Jimmy Page. Hi Scarlett.
Hello there.
Thank you so much for coming on our Freestream show. And how are you, and how's the family in these strange times?
Yeah, we're all coping. I think we've all had highs and lows, but predominantly, I think we'll come out of this having learnt some things.
If I can, just ask you a little bit about where it all began for you. I would imagine that sort of as a the daughter of Jimmy Page, that you grew up around a lot of very famous musicians. But where did your passion for photography spring from? You know, who or what led you to make that creative step towards this as a career?
So growing up, I mean, it wasn't as you'd imagine in terms of tons of musicians and, in the kitchen all the time or anything like that. But I suppose there was always real creatives, and image was, very important in terms of my mum was a model in the late 60s, and she worked with she did covers for Vogue and Tatler, and I mean, she was very successful, and she worked with a lot of the incredible photographers like Clive Arrowsmith, who's still shooting.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
Yeah, and Robert Whittaker, who's a music photographer as well. So, looking back, I think, well, actually, not only was my dad's image very important in terms of, I'd see a lot of music papers and things, but obviously my mum as well. And so growing up with certainly creativity around, and actually we knew quite a few photographers as well. And I was always interested in what they were doing. And a very close family friend used to take photographs and then airbrush them with colours. And I was always really fascinated to watch him work. But so at school, and I always sort of veered a bit more towards art, and went to foundation course and did a little play with a bit of everything. And it was there that when I started taking pictures, it dawned on me pretty quickly that I really loved, my art was very sort of photographic, actually. So when I used to draw things, it would be a sort of a almost precise reproduction of what I was looking at. So, and that's quite hard, but with a camera you can catch those exact moments.
Yes.
And stay alive, in that frame. So then I went to do a degree in London it was called Polytechnic of Central London. It's now University of Westminster, but it was the faculty was in just behind the BBC in Oxford Circus, so it was a really cool place to be. And it was towards the end of that I met a music photographer called Ross Halfin and assisted him for about a year and a half, and learnt really how to do well. I wasn't thinking I'm going to be a music photographer, but I sort of fell into it after working with Ross and getting experience there. I mean, so I already knew the basics of how to use a camera and do a bit of lighting and use medium format, but it was really through sort of living that life, helping him, that I sort of gained some contacts and fell into that world, which was familiar, obviously, because of my father.
Yes, but I was going to say, but was it obvious from the start that music photography would be your photographic direction, or did you really just fall into it, as you say?
I did fall into it, and obviously meeting Ross at that exact time as I was just graduating was brilliant for me because, well, for one thing, we were traveling the world a lot. He still actively does do that, but for me it was like a whole new world and really exciting, learning how to set things up very quickly, shooting gigs. There was a lot of bands I wasn't so interested in, like Metallica and Def Leppard at the time, but it was the birth of grunge time, and so it was really exciting. And there were some bands there that I was working on with him that were certainly huge inspirations for me at the time, and that familiarity obviously sat quite well. I wasn't particularly fazed by being around musicians, I was quite just sort of hanging around and waiting.
I was going to ask you about that, because do you think that, you know, your family background helps you to understand a musician's mindset and how you approach them in your photo sessions, for example? Is there sort of a shared knowledge and respect that comes from that?
Well, I think I've always been of the mind that musicians aren't necessarily in the game of having their photograph taken, and that's not what they want to do. They just want to play music, but it's part of the deal, and certainly become more and more part of the deal as time has gone on. In the 60s, you know, they didn't really have to do so many photo shoots.
You then branched out into your own after working with Ralph?
I started doing a few shoots. Well, so when he was shooting live photography, for example, if he was shooting a whole gig, then my job as an assistant would be to load the film backs of the 35 mils that he was passing over to me with film. And there was quite a lot of downtime in between him shooting those 36 frames. But so I would take a few pictures of my own, and it was through doing that. There was one festival, we were in Australia shooting The Big Day Out and working a lot with Soundgarden. And there was, I just took pictures of Bjork and the Ramones, who were on the same set that same day, the Smashing Pumpkins and Soundgarden. And one of my images I put with a syndicating library, and it made a back cover of a magazine. And it was really from then that I started just building up my own portfolio and getting a little bit of work in my own right.
Yeah, but did you start off touring? Did you tour with rock bands? Was that your kind of one of your first gigs?
So, well, one of my first assignments that was it was like my own project in a way, is I took all the air miles that I'd accrued while working with Ross and took the plunge and decided to head out to a festival called Lollapalooza in America in 1994. I knew the tour manager for the two headline acts, which were the Beastie Boys and the Smashing Pumpkins. And so, I mean, I can't remember all the ins and outs, but somehow I knew that if I went over there, they'd give me a pass and I'd be okay. But I had to, you know, get myself there, get a hotel, try and sort of beg lifts off people to get to the site. But then once I was on site, I had an access all area pass and was able to free roam. But I mean, I was quite shy. So a lot of the, you know, I wouldn't just sort of barge into dressing rooms and you know, I was quite respectful, but shooting all the all the whole sets of the Beastie Boys and the Smashing Pumpkins, none of this 3 songs, no flash and you're out kind of thing. So I was lucky.
The classic rock photographer's gig, right?
So I was really lucky that I could just shoot as much as I wanted and other bits. So backstage, you know, there was a band called the Breeders, and I was trying to get shots of them for my portfolio, really, not live shots, because I think I've always thought it's all fine having the live photography, but it's those other shots that you can get are really your own, you know.
Yes,
sometimes
exactly.
It's hard to differentiate between the 10 photographers in the pit and who got what shot.
Exactly.
If you're all shooting the same songs, but to be able to get those other images, and that was where I was introduced to a British band called The Verve through the touring photographer for the Beastie Boys, a guy called Ricky Powell, said, "Oh, you've got to meet this band. They're from Wigan. You know, they're from England. You know that thing when you're in a foreign country and you're."
Yeah.
He sort of makes that mental sort of leap between, well, you're English and you should meet him.
Yeah.
Because you get on, you're like from the same country. So anyway, it was brilliant because I did take some images of them, and I was doing all sorts of weird things like bounce flashing and using cross-process film and a fisheye lens, and I was just playing around. But that image ended up on their album artwork for an album called A Northern Soul, which again sort of catapulted my portfolio a little bit higher up in the sort of ranking.
When you're backstage and when you're taking pictures of the bands as they come on, as they go off, or just roaming around, how does that work for you and the bands? Are they open to that, or do they tell you to, you know, go away, or do they know what their gig is there? Do they recognise you? How's the relationship in backstage when you're just literally sort of almost on the fly, grabbing, as you say, more intimate shots?
So I'm always a little bit sort of wary when bands are coming off stage. When they're going on, that's fine. It's quite nice to get pictures of them walking down the corridor. But when they're coming off, sometimes personally, I don't know, I just feel like I just want to give them a little bit of space before you just barge in, because I've seen other photographers just getting straight in, and I just think it doesn't sit right with me. But I think sometimes they haven't had a great show, and you wouldn't know. You think it's amazing, and they're like, what, you can't know what they're thinking. And anyway, I do tend to overthink and get a bit too sensitive, I think, on that front. But when I'm given the free rein, then I'm happy to sort of take that time without getting too much in people's faces. But
so after that, you then moved into sort of from potentially this is what happened. You moved into sort of live photography, stage photography and performance photography, into more portraiture commissions.
Well, so for years I did. I used to always shoot Glastonbury Festival in the sort of late 90s, really, and some of the wettest years, and that was quite tough.
The mud.
Yeah. So I would shoot it for either syndicating agencies such as like Retina, or I did it for music magazines like Kerrang. And what would happen there is they would usually pay for the syndicating agencies would pay for your processing, but you would pay for the film, and that would just be it. So then if you sold any images further down the line, that's how you would make the money on that. But for sort of being down there for 4 days and getting a B&B and carrying a monopod, a long lens, a box to stand on in the really high stage pits, a rucksack with all, 2 bodies and extra lenses and flashes, it was really hard on the body.
Yes.
The muddy, when it was really muddy, then it just walking through that mud and just pulling your boots out and having to go from one stage to the other. And
because it sounds, I mean, from the outside, being given the Glastonbury gig to go and shoot just sounds like a dream to many people who are watching here now. But the actual energy and the physicality of it sounds quite extraordinary.
Yeah, hats off to anyone who's doing it now. I mean, there were talks at the beginning of this year, and I was hoping to do something a bit more portrait based at the 50th anniversary for Glastonbury, which has obviously just been. And
a backstage portrait set.
Yeah. So a little bit like Resonators, but in a very official capacity, without having to traverse the whole site with loads of gear, So yeah, that was the plan, and that's what I would really enjoy doing now. I've done my hard graph, and also Reading Festival I used to do as well, every year, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would really want to do that now. I think I'm a bit, just don't want to be the oldest person in the pit having someone land on my head, which has happened. Yeah, so I mean, I do still keep my hand in a bit of live photography, but more often when it's to do with a project or a band that I work with a lot. For example, I did a recent press session with the Stereophonics, who I've known since about 96.
Yes.
And if they were playing a big show, which at the moment everything is on hold, as we know. But, then I would go down and I'd shoot the whole show, and I'd get on the stage and do some backstage stuff. So that kind of thing I still do, but it's more, for a project, or if the band have commissioned it, really.
Yeah. I love the work that you did with the Stereophonics. It looked like the entrance to a football ground or something where they're kissing.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful picture. And for me, what's the piece, the actual... The bit that catches my eye every time is the eyes. She's kissing, but her eyes are going up like that. It's just, it's like, I've got to do this kiss.
Yeah, and actually that was one of the most thought out pictures that I've done where I even, because I shot them on medium format and we had a very small time scale to do it, but I even got a little bit of tracing paper and drew exactly how I needed everyone to be, so that when you open this gatefold, because it was an hour cover, so there was a square on the front, but then it opened and you'd see the rest of the image. And I thought, you know, my tutors at uni would be very proud of me.
Do you have any tips for kind of budding, you know, photographers who perhaps want to take pictures of their local rock band to begin with? Have you got any tips for them that, as you say, obviously, what tips or tricks do you employ to get a, let's say, rather truculent musician to respond to what you're asking them?
So one tip would be, if it was somebody really up and, you know, just starting, trying to take live shots and stuff, I would say try and seek out the band and do some shots before they go on, like in the afternoon after sound check, when they would be just milling around at the venue, you know, get in contact with press officers, or, you know, and there are still venues that you don't actually need a photo pass for, but I guess most you do now. But, you know, just that's it, going down, even seeing if you can take some pictures at sound check, and, you know, the sort of alleyways down the side of the venue, or you know, just out and about. There's always something that you can make happen, even if it's just natural light. And then just further down the line, I mean, my sort of, not motto, but the way I like to do things is always try to keep it quite quick and painless, and sort of have a bit of a plan of what I'm doing, but not too sort of rigid a structure, you know, try and let it flow, try and sort of capture what they're giving me. You know, it's a two-way thing.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you say that. You know, do you think they appreciate the fact that you are actually creating great pictures, but also you're quick? Is that something that sort of often look for when you're working with celebrities and rock stars? How long are you going to be? You know, how long is it going to take?
Well, I think everyone's happy if it finishes, as long as you've got all the shots, you know. Then I think everyone's happy to if it can be done quite quickly. I mean, I've always heard those horror stories of people like Prince. You know, there was a friend of mine, Andy Earl, who's a photographer, taking pictures of Prince, and I think after 2 frames he went, "You've got the shot," and walked away. So, you know, that sort of confirms my my sort of thinking of, you know, they just don't want to be doing it. But you know, 2 shots, I mean, they could be 2 really bad shots. No disrespect to Andy Earl, because they look great shots. But, you know, there's no guarantee. Sometimes they're your test shots, aren't they? You know?
Well, yeah, you know, you always feel that you're warming up towards the picture rather than like get it in the first frame. I mean, maybe Cartier-Bresson could get it in 1 frame, but for the rest of us mere mortals, I think we have to kind of warm up to the point, and then you feel it, don't you? What you been up to creatively in lockdown, and how's it been for you, and what's going on? What have you been doing?
But I'm very much stuck at home and not seeing anybody apart from my immediate family. I have always wanted to do so locally, you know, with my kids and everything. I have got involved sometimes at school, and quite often I take pictures of like all the preschool leavers, those sort of age 4-year-old children, and it's, you know, as the years have gone on, they keep calling back going, "Oh, will you do it?" And I'm like, okay. And it takes quite a lot of time. But I always come away from it going, I just love it. I love the kids and the way they've got snot on their face and they're holding weird things, and, you know, trying to, and some of them don't know me at all. And so it's just, again, trying to reach something. And very quickly in the playground, I've set up a black backdrop, like a black velvet, and just natural light, and just take a few shots. And it's like a fundraiser thing, really. But I've always, since I started doing that, I've always been really interested in those comfort toys that some of them have. And, you know, one had this old telephone and he had to hold it. And and I've always thought it'd be quite an interesting thing to do, to take pictures of kids with their comfort toys. And so I thought, what could get me out of the house? And my husband gets home at 4:30. I know, I'm going to start that project. So I called it Buddy. it started off being called Apple because my son has found some new comfort toys in lockdown, and actually it's been a real time of anxiety for a lot of children, and some people liken it to a bereavement actually.
Yes.
You know, for them it's really hard to process and they feel quite fragile.
Very tough, yeah.
So I started doing this, and then I've basically, it just sort of grew and grew, and I've done close to 40 portraits now.
How did you discover what buddy, comfort object each of them had? Did you just ask them?
So I just put the feelers out there to begin with. I said, does your child have a comfort toy that they're really sort of close, something that they've always had or something that they're really leaning on? And actually some people were coming back and confusing it with sort of lockdown and going, well, my son is riding his bike a lot. And I'm like, no, that's not what I mean.
Not the thing.
My son wants to wear his robe all the time, or he's really like using sanitizer. No, I'm after that scraggly looking thing that you don't even know what it is sometimes. It's, but it's the love of their lives, And it was quite soon into starting to do it. So I started doing it just with people I know locally, which was lovely, just to get out the house and go into gardens and not really know what you're going to do, what you're going to find, and find little nooks and crannies and just make something happen quickly in available light. What's been so lovely is seeing how thought-provoking the images are actually, and just, sometimes kids just want to do cheese, and it's like, so I say to them, right, this time you don't have to smile. I just want you to be here. So, I want to just sit here for a minute, and I just talk to them maybe a little bit. I'll just say, I wanted that Mona Lisa look. I wanted them to, you couldn't.
Sort of impassive to a certain extent, yeah. Hard to read what's going on.
Hard to read, but actually what ends up happening with children is they look really wise. It's interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
They look really wise, and it is very thought-provoking, and they're sort of holding their own very much so. Yeah. And then there's this thing, and quite soon into doing the project, I put this link to, I did a project recently called Resonators, where I approached all the guitarists that I could find, and who would be sort of recognized in the top sort of 100 greatest guitarists kind of thing, and I wanted to take portraits of all these people, and the sort of common thread throughout is I wanted them to have a guitar in the shot. So it became clear there that actually really relaxed them, and well, sometimes too much, because they went into the other world where they just start twiddling away.
Yes.
Like the sort of playing face, and it's like, no, because I actually need you. I need to sort of connect with you, but I'm happy that you are in a good place and feeling quite relaxed. But similarly with this buddy project, having a child holding that one true love, the thing that they find more comforting than anything, did the same thing actually, and so it was quite interesting.
I wanted, before we move on to Resonators, which I really want to talk to you about, I had one question I wanted to ask you. When you said to your family, I want to go on tour and be a rock photographer and tour with these rock musicians, living the rock and roll lifestyle, come on, fess up, let's spill the beans. Did your family say, with their immense knowledge of what it'd be like to be, on a rock tour, did they say, absolutely no way, Scarlett?
Well, the thing is because I was born in the early 70s, and if you've seen Absolutely Fabulous, I am probably more the sort of sappy character in the equation.
Brilliant. So, absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
As a child of, parents that were very much in that time, children usually rebel and go the opposite way to their parents. So if you've got very straight parents, you'll probably, go a bit crazy and off the rails. Well, I never really did that. Maybe my time's still yet to come. But I mean, I've just always been quite sensible.
let's have a little chat about Resonators, which is a fabulous series of images. Can you tell us a little bit about it, the genesis of this project and how you started it? And I know you self-funded it. And what was it like producing it?
Well, so the idea was presented to me by my agent, Adele, at the time. And I was a bit reluctant because throughout my photographic career, I haven't wanted to sort of be known as Jimmy Page's daughter. I mean, I've really sort of gone the other way because I just wanted to do things my way and not be sort of, not hanging on the coattails sort of thing. So, exactly. But it wasn't until, so when this was brought up, I was a bit like, because I don't know that much about guitars. And, obviously I do work with musicians, but I was a bit like, well, I'm not really that interested in guitars. But obviously it's familiar. And
having grown up with them, I should imagine you probably had sick to death of them.
Yeah, well, no, but it's not the thing that, it's not my passion. Yeah. There are, so photography is more, if it was about taking pictures of famous photographers, then maybe I'll be like, oh yeah, come on then. Yeah. But no, so it took a little bit of
good idea, by the way. Good idea.
No, it's a good idea, isn't it? So I thought about it, and they were just saying, if anyone could do this in terms of getting a green card and sort of approaching this collection of musicians, then you probably can. And I was like, okay. So I thought, well, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it to raise some funds for a charity or be sort of connected with something. So I was thinking about that. And obviously at the time I just lost two very close friends to cancer. They weren't teenagers, but I approached the Teenage Cancer Trust because I knew some people who were working there and said, well, how about, we work towards a goal. So I think I was shooting for about a year with the view to getting a big print made and getting them signed by each of the artists and auctioning them on eBay in the week that they had the Teenage Cancer Trust concerts at the Royal Albert Hall. It was all displayed there in an exhibition.
Wonderful.
And
Wonderful.
And so that was a way of sort of validating the project as well and saying, it's not just a glory project for me. I'm not just doing it to go, oh, look at me, and I'm taking pictures of guitarists. It's actually going to hopefully do some good. And also the fact that I could say who I was and I'd grown up in the sort of extended musical family, then there was an element of trust, I think, that I was able to gain from artists such as Peter Green, who from Fleetwood Mac, who was really tough to find. And I did have to try and find stepping stones to lots of these people. Like, it's one thing finding out what label they're on or finding out who is their press officer or manager, but you kind of almost need to find something in between, like a connection, so that you can go, so a friend of mine who's a press officer might be able to link me to someone, and then I've got a way in, because it's quite tough.
Yeah.
And one thing I hate doing is asking people for things and hassling. But I have to really do a lot of that, and or just keep reminding and going, oh, my email's been really playing up, so you may not have got my last.
I know that one. One.
Yeah. So there was a lot of that, but it was quite a mission to pull off, actually. And there was one week where I went to, I was hoping to get Paul McCartney, who obviously is a bass player, but he does also play guitar, and no one's going to argue that fact, I think.
No,
when it comes
for sure
to
he plays guitar,
yeah. I had a slim chance that he might do a shoot in LA, and he was going to be there in this time frame. So I thought, right, I'm going to build a trip to LA. Obviously it was self-funded, so I had to sort of make the most of this time and sort of factor in the people who'd said yes. For example, John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Slash, Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols. And it was very much a sort of, Monday, Slash in the morning, John Frusciante in the afternoon, Tuesday. and it was really surreal, but amazing.
Sounds amazing. So do all these guys live in Los Angeles? So you were able to do that, obviously?
Yeah, and they all live pretty much in the same area as well, West Hollywood and sort of Hollywood Hills. But the Paul McCartney thing, it was going to happen at any point. And actually, then I just got a phone call saying, right, we're going to be at the Jimmy Kimmel show tonight at 6. So if you want to come and get your snap, we'll be there then. And I was like,
oh, snap.
And I'd literally not been 24 hours in LA. So I was just been running around getting equipment and hire a car and all that stuff. And then I was like, oh my God. So I had to hot foot it down to find the Jimmy Kimmel show, bang on the backstage door, try and say, oh, hello, I'm supposed to be taking a picture of Paul McCartney with my light already set up, a battery sort of flash Lumidyne thing.
Yeah.
And just quickly whizzed in, went, oh, it'd be good if you could have an acoustic guitar. And anyway, it just happened. And I got 9 frames, and one of them was great. And I was like, I slept that night.
Well, when you're about to go into a session with someone as famous as, and I know you are probably used to working with and being with, quite famous celebrities and rock musicians, are you nervous?
Generally not, unless it's somebody that I had on my wall as a teenager, and then So for like the big names like Bowie and Paul McCartney, I'm that healthy sort of, pre-shoot, which I get with anyone. It doesn't, it can be someone who works in an office. It's just, I always get that kind of like, it just keeps me on track, but not too nervous.
It's a healthy nervousness, almost like a musician or an actor would say when they go on stage, that a certain amount of nerves before you go on to your performance. And let's face it, a relationship between a photographer and their sitter, their portraits, is a kind of a performance. Yeah,
no, for sure. It feels exactly the same. That sort of feeling. And then, post show or post shoot, you have that sort of adrenaline, especially if you've had a long shoot, it's been really successful and everyone's really happy, then it feels amazing.
Yeah.
It's a high. So that's my natural drug, you see, going back to the previous conversation of the
rock and roll conversation.
Yeah.
I find a glass or two of Chardonnay is probably my natural drug after a session too. It's really nice. During the Resonators series, and I noticed that your work is a mixture of colour and black and white, and the Resonators is obviously probably shot digitally, or I don't know, but predominantly, you've made these beautiful black and white prints, and you've chosen black and white as your medium. Why for the Resonators, and what in general outside of Resonators, how do you choose between colour and black and white? Is it before you shoot, during the shoot, after the shoot? What's the path there?
So with Resonators, we started off, it was all colour, actually, bar 2 images. I think one of Wilco Johnson and one of Dick Taylor. And but then after the first initial stage of it, we looked to making a book because it was such a lovely collection of people and just a real slice of time as well. I ended up doing a Kickstarter and I made a beautiful black and white book, which you can't get anymore. I mean, it's sort of floating around, but so then all the images we sort of changed to duotones and printed it really beautifully. And the chap who helped me design it worked with Anton Corbijn a lot. And so that was a real pleasure for me because I've always been a huge fan of Anton Corbijn. So it was nice to really sort of focus on changing them all and sort of cropping slightly differently. But that was a very conscious decision to sort of create the book in that way. But I mean, a colour image can look so different in black and white. And,
yes.
As it can in post-processing. I mean, it's like, how far do you take it? Yeah. And I don't like to rely too much on post-processing. I quite like to capture an image organically. But I don't know. I just
is your thinking when you're thinking that your final result is going to be in black and white. Does anything change in terms of your methodology, your setup, or anything like that, or do you simply decide later whether it's going to work in black and white or colour?
Sometimes I know it's going to end up as a black and white image, but I think sometimes I personally think it's harder to get incredible color images. I think sometimes it's quite easy to turn it to black and white and make it look like a classic image, certainly if it's someone who's famous.
Yeah.
if I've got a terrible shot of, like, I mean, there have been some.
Surely not, Scarlett. Surely not. No terrible shot.
No, it's not all corkers, but I think you can sometimes make something look a little bit more atmospheric. I think I've done a shot, say, of Slash in a corridor, and the hotel was just really grim, and there was just no vibe at all. But you can create a bit more of a vibe if you transform it all into magical black and white. But
yes. And for the wall as well, if you're going to make prints for the wall, somehow, that it somehow works, doesn't it? Black and white, large prints, black and white. It's just got something about it which everyone loves. We all love, and so do people who want to, hopefully buy them. We have to say that these beautiful limited edition prints are available on your on your Instagram, from your Instagram shop, and they are truly beautiful. So when you go to a rock star's house in Los Angeles, if I could just briefly ask you about what happens. You knock on the door, Slash opens the door. Do you say, "Can I just have a little look around first, please, Slash? Then I'll say where I want to photograph you." What's your process?
Well, every picture tells a story. Do you know what I mean? And and like every house that I went to was just completely different. That's what's so brilliant about it, is because, when I went to Joe Walsh's house, he is married to Barbara Bach's sister, who's married to Ringo. And she was really, really amazing in terms of, like, she'd got all his clothes ready and, like, accessories, and she was acting like a bit of a stylist.
Oh, that's helpful. Yeah, really helpful.
Really helpful. And they'd got, like, catering, which is unusual as well. So I was like...
Really helpful.
And so I had a good look around their garden. I didn't do any shots inside. I think I was more interested in being outside as well for the light. So I wanted to try and keep it sort of natural. But say when I went to Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols house, actually I did some lit stuff inside. He had as you're inside the house, his front door is a big Union Jack, and I thought it's a great backdrop. So and I lit that, and he was just playing away, and we were actually playing a game of Name That Tune. So he was playing a tune, and then we'd have to go, "Oh, it's that," What
do you look for first? Can you actually, is it something in your mind? What do you look for first? Do you look for, you put your camera to your eye. Are you looking for frame? Are you looking for light? Are you looking for composition? Is there any particular order in which those things occur to you, or is it a mixture of things every time?
So I think if I'm scouting for a location, it's not about a beautiful vista in the background. For me, it's more about textures or sort of spaces. When I went to John Squire's house from the Stone Roses, he lives up in Macclesfield, and he was lives really, really, really remotely. And I found it eventually, and his garden has like a beautiful view. So I did think, well, because I'm not much of a landscape photographer, so I think that's as well. I'm like, to make it look good, and you've got a person in the way, it doesn't always work. But this did, and there was lots of amazing clouds, and his guitar was one that had been customized by Damien Hirst, so it was very colourful and had lots of different coloured dots on it, and so but I didn't know I was going to do that shot, but it worked out perfectly, and it had everything that I wanted it to. It's
a great shot, and gosh, how much must that guitar be worth?
Yeah, I know.
Can you imagine? Have you any ambitions at the moment left unfulfilled? Given a free choice, who would be the person you'd like to photograph next, given a completely free choice? I think they might have to be living, but I don't mind. You can say whether they're alive or dead. I don't mind.
Yeah, I can't say Prince now. I missed my moment.
Oh, he'd only let you take 2 frames anyway, wouldn't he? So he'd say, "Dad, 2 frames. That's it, done."
There are tons, to be fair. There's some very contemporary artists such as St. Vincent, who I think looks incredible. Bands that I like Tame Impala, I'd love to work with them because I actually really love them.
Great band.
Yeah, and Courtney Barnett, another Australian, really love what she does. But someone like Madonna, would probably terrify me, but also make me feel quite excited.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you a few questions, a little bit of fun. We would have called this Desert Island Disc questions, but we'd got sued by the BBC. So it's kind of like if you're in isolation or if you've gone up into a mountaintop, if we've stopped being in isolation. So just a few quick fire questions. Yep. Okay, Scarlett, you can take with you in isolation or up the mountaintop one camera and one lens. What would that camera be, please? And what would that lens be?
So right here and now, if I was going tomorrow, I would take... I've got it here to hand.
Aha.
Yes.
Aha.
Well, I just take the camera that I'm using right now, and it's nothing fancy. It's just what I use as my regular... Right, I'm going out to do a shot for Buddy or a portrait.
Yeah.
It's 5mm, 1.8. I have got a 1.4, but I just tend to just like my 1.8 and my Nikon 810. I've always used Nikon.
Looks great.
And, I've not used the 850, but I've had a lot of people say that it's a bit too unforgiving. It's a bit too hyper real. So I'm very happy with this.
What was the lens again? I missed that.
It's a 85 1.8.
Oh, okay. Great choice, if I may say so.
Social distancing portraits.
Yeah, great choice. Social distancing, 2 meters, it's perfect. Okay, now we're going to go on to asking you about books. And so, first of all, you can take one photography book with you in your mountaintop or in isolation. What would that be, please?
So how long am I away for? Because this is
I don't think we've actually. We'll have to look in the rule book, but I don't think the rules cover that.
Okay, so because I don't really get a chance to read, or I never seem to have any real time off ever, even in lockdown, I haven't really been able to do some of the things I thought I would do.
Yeah.
So I would take, I've got it here. It's a book about the Beastie Boys, but it's all of a very visual. I still haven't had a chance to look at it, and I really wanted it, and it's come, and that's what I would. I mean, there's loads of photographers in there, but it's a beautiful big book, and that's what I would like.
And I know you're a massive fan of the Beastie Boys, anyway.
Yeah.
And also Smashing Pumpkins, I think one of your faves too.
Yes, they are. I mean, sort of emotionally, I'd want to take a photo book of like kids. I was thinking I've got pictures of the kids in books that I've made. Would I take that? That would make me feel quite depressed. And then I've got some beautiful books
good point.
that my dad has made, like about like his career, or there's one that just with him with pictures from his youth. And then I thought it's a bit weird. I don't want to just take one of my dad. It's got a bit, but then I don't want to feel emotional. So I think that's where Beastie Boys is good.
So now, one non-photography book in your indeterminate amount of time, either up the mountain in isolation. What would your non-photography book be? So it would be currently it would be again, I got given a Christmas present, which they go, oh thank you, and then I don't get a chance to. So there's two which I'm sort of jumping the gun a little bit about. You're going to ask me if I'm going to allow two.
No, well, so there's one called The Artist's Way, and I've heard it's brilliant, and it's about. I don't have a creative block, but apparently it's really, really amazing in sort of to do with creativity. So I would be interested in getting a chance to read it because it's supposed to be really good.
Hold it up again, Scarlett. The Artist's Way. Okay, we'll get an image of that and flash it up as well.
Cameron, not Julia Margaret Cameron, but Julia Cameron.
Okay. Show us. Have you got the other one there, just in case we were allowed you to have two?
Well, the other one sort of ties in with the film thing that you might be asking.
Yeah, let me ask you that one now then.
Bring that one up. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you can take, you can watch one film. You can take one film to watch up your mountain or in isolation, whichever we decide it'll be. What would that be, please, Scott?
I think I would choose the film that when I first saw it, and I think I was sort of flicking through channels and happened upon it and went, what is this? It's like so beautiful. And it's not necessarily the best film of all time, but it's Night of the Hunter. So I was given, again for Christmas, and I haven't read it yet, but I was given a book, The Filming of the Night of the Hunter. And for example, I think it was this image in the film where there's a boat on the river and there's spider webs in the foreground, and it's all just beautifully filmed.
Oh. And I sprung this one on you a little quickly, but I've tailored our normal questions for you, and this one is, okay, you can take one music track to listen to. Scarlett, which one would you take, please?
So I think the one that I always say, joking, but obviously not really, like when it's my funeral, I really love Last Goodbye by Jeff Buckley. And can you imagine playing that at your funeral?
I think that's great. I think it'd be great.
Well, I mean, it's I've got to be a bit more thoughtful, I think, with my song choice if it's going to be. But I mean, I do love that song.
Great choice.
I mean, there's so many songs I love, but that one, when you sort of ask the question, it's the first one that pops into my mind.
Then that's a very good reason for it to be your choice. Okay, now finally, one luxury item. I always find this a fascinating question, and I'm dying to know what yours would be. What luxury item would you take up the mountain in isolation with you, please, Scarlett?
Well, as long as there's a bath, I do love a very long soak. So it would be some really nice bath stuff.
Hey, great choice.
That's how I like to just, take a bit of escape, the children, everything, the like constant questions, and then I go to my sanctuary, nice bath. For about 2 hours, keep refilling it with hot water. I'm going to stay here as long as I possibly can. So yeah,
I think that's a great choice, and I think my wife would probably agree with you entirely, and that's what she loves to do as well. Scarlet Page, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I could talk to you for another 5 hours at least. Thank you so much for being on Masters of Photography Freestream, and we'll talk to you very soon. Take care out there, eh?
Thank you.
So that's it for this week's show. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.